Now that we got our shaders set up, let's take a look at adding some nice depth of field to this. So I'm going to jump into my Arnold camera, to the Arnold tab, depth of field, turn that on, and as you probably know by now, we won't see anything until we bring up our aperture size. Normally you want quite low numbers there. So there we can see it's very blurry straight away. So I'll stop that, go out, back into my scene view, and if I select my camera and come to my handle, come to the dot in the middle there, okay, the center of the camera, right click and go to focus handle. It's also got the shortcut of Z there. Okay, and now we can use this to guide where the focus distance is, right? If you watch this number, as I click on this box and move it up, you can see that changing. Right, so I can bring it up to like the surface of the fluid, something like that. Okay, and now jump back into my render, click render, and then we should see that kind of lining up with the surface now. So it's a bit more of a, you know, user-friendly way of working that. Oops. There we go. So you can see that we're a bit closer. So I've got quite a lot, probably too much blur there for this distance of camera. We just round this up to 1.4 and drop the aperture size down considerably to 0.03. Press H to zoom in on that. So there we go. We can look at the last, compare with the last snapshot. You can save these to disk, by the way. You can either right click, save frame here, and save this render, you know, this single image, or you can just click here and it will use, I think the snap name will be this, so if you want to change the name or change the root or whatever, you can just click there to save them to disk. Nice and quick. Great, so got some nice depth of field there. So let's take a look at getting rid of the noise. So something we haven't spoken about too much is, or at all as far as I remember, is if we come into main and properties, properties, output, AOV. So looking at using AOVs to clean up noise, right? Something I do recommend highly is if you go to the Arnold website, you can find you know, lots in the help documents of Arnold. You can find a lot of help there on removing noise. We don't have enough time to go into it into a lot of detail, but I'll show you, you know, the basic idea. So we can basically, you know, we know here that we've got a lot of subsurface. So basically everything here, the yogurt, the strawberries, every part of the strawberry except for the hairs has subsurface and is quite notorious for causing noise, right? So to check that, to isolate just the subsurface, we can use an AOV. As we're rendering with EXRs, we can use that, right? So if we come into AOV, not shader, sorry, come here to, I think by default it's like this, so you just press plus and you'll be able to add an AOV, and then if you come to this drop down, you get this big list of different AOVs that you can add, right? So common ones would be things like depth. So you can use depth to add we've done depth of field in camera, but if you add the depth here, you can use that to add it in the compositing stage. Maybe, I don't know, things like the albedo, so just the raw color by itself, diffuse, the direct and indirect lights, all kinds of stuff. So what we want is the subsurface. So let's try and find that. Where is it? Subsurface scattering. So let's take a look at that. Okay. And then if you come up to the top bar here, click that down. Not yet. If I click render again, hopefully I'll get my subsurface scattering layer. Okay, that renders come out again. Let's see. So now you can see when I come here, I've got this subsurface scattering layer. If I click on that, should see something different. So this is the subsurface scattering isolated, right? We can see, yeah, there's a lot of noise there. I think we can either even separate the subsurface by direct and indirect. Yeah, so we've got subsurface direct, subsurface indirect. But to alleviate noise on any of these parts, we can either, raise the camera samples, but this will multiply everything. And if we don't have noise in the diffuse or the specular, then there's no point raising this. Okay, we probably do need to raise this a bit, but most of our noise is coming from the subsurface scattering, right? So we'll focus on that for the moment. Just click render on that again, and then I'll raise these samples and see if that can alleviate some of the noise. There we go. So that's done. And now if we look here, yeah, I've got them separated. So I've got the indirect light, direct, and them combined together for the subsurface. So we can see in the indirect we got a lot more noise there. Take a snapshot of that before I forget. And let's see if we raise these. Let's double it and see if we can alleviate some of that noise. And hopefully that will help us quite a bit. Okay, so that's looking much cleaner now. Okay, so that's with double the samples on the subsurface. So we can still see some kind of noise there, but often if we go back to the color, yeah, see it kind of gets hidden in everything else, Compare it to the other without those two samples, you can see it's pretty much, that's okay. Maybe with some denoising, that would be fine. But I'll just go ahead and maybe add one more camera sample here, an anti-aliasing sample. So this will multiply everything here. So be careful with this number. Don't go too high. I don't really go higher than, I don't know, 9, 11, 12, something like that. But before, there are noise in the depth of field, or I believe motion blur can only be cleaned with your anti-aliasing noise. So start with that, make sure the depth of field and the motion blur is clean, and then go ahead and diagnose where the rest of the noise is coming from. You can also add samples with your lights as well. So if you come into your lights, you have samples here, and these normally don't affect the time too much. They won't remove all the noise, but that can be useful here in the quad lights as well. If one specific light, is causing some noise. Great, so that's coming out pretty clean now. I'll just give that some moments to render. There we go, so we got the render done there. Save that as a snapshot as well. So we can just go through them now and look at all the changes from the start there. A huge difference to the end. It's quite nice to go through them and look at the difference. Great. So if you want to save that out, first of all as well, if you want to, for your resolution, here we've got 1280, you can either come here to select the size of your render, or you can actually just do it in the ROP node itself. In your output, come to, if I can find it, where is it? Here, override camera resolution, check that. You can see that that's made it smaller. So you can choose whatever there. If you want 2K, make it bigger. can even go up to 4K if your computer can handle it, right? Okay, I'll leave it at the default 720. And yeah, so make sure, yeah, drop in your root. So come here, go into your hip, render, we'll make a new folder, my render, accept, then drop your root in here, say my render dot, remember to have your $F3 for the frame number, padding of 3 digits, and EXR. So if you use if you want to save out the AOVs, okay, that we spoke about, and you need to use an EXR, you can either save them out to their own frame sequence, or in an EXR you'll have them all within each file saved, you know, buried in that file, and then they can be used in a compositing software, right? Great, so you accept that, and then make sure you set up your frame range, delete channels there, and put in whatever you want, and render that to disk. Great. So that's the end of week 5, and that's the end of the course. So, you know, we've done a lot. We've got, what, 2 rigid body simulations, 3 flip simulations. We've covered a lot of different things. We've looked at using a tank, using emissions, 3 different emitters for the ice cream. We've used viscosity and surface tension. We've changed the time of our sims and got some really nice results. So what I highly recommend that when you are, you know, that you follow through and get yourself some nice scenes like what we've done in the class, and save them for yourself. But it's also very important that you take what you've learned from the class and apply them to your own shots. Okay, maybe you can make some small changes. Just, you know, you could just, what if I add more strawberries into this shot, or have a tank with, I don't know, with fluid pouring into the tank as well as strawberries, or, you know, you can mix them up and try and come up with your own solutions. And it doesn't have to be food, obviously. You know, you can do look at water and, you know, more transparent fluids. They're quite fun, and you know, make some of your own art.